Start. Time. Now, before I get onto the contents of the resolution, I would briefly like to thank everyone for being here. Hopefully we can enlighten ourselves with a really educational round about how the military functions in the United States federal government. So just to define some terms, we define ban as completely end the production of and not allowed to be used specifically in the military. And we define fully autonomous combat vehicles as vehicles that don't have any portion of human control used for war or used by the military at all. So what's going on in the status quo? Pretty much the background information. One, the White House put out a press release specifically saying that the public deserves harsh reactions to the fully autonomous vehicles which are trying to be developed by the Pentagon right now. Furthermore, we see that the Pentagon has already built the Black Knight tank that inherently doesn't need to be manned. So what's going on is that vehicle right now is having a lot of problems. The robotics, it isn't functioning. It isn't actually working right now. But the Pentagon is pushing for it and has put over $1 trillion of funding into this one black vehicle, which they're trying to get out and put in the Middle East. Third argument is that right now in the Middle East, the perception of drones are unmanned, and what terrorist organizations use, such as ISIS, is they use them as propaganda in order to get people to join them. How they do that is civilian casualties occur. So for every one civilian casualty, it's projected by the United States military that seven terrorists are join ISIS. So thus the plan test. The USFG will ban all fully autonomous combat vehicles. Once again, the USFG will ban all fully autonomous combat vehicles. The time frame will be as soon as possible, and the funding will be done through normal ways and means. The weighing mechanism for this round is net benefits. Thus, the team who provides the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people should and shall win. Any questions?
Yeah. Under your definition, is a drone a fully autonomous combat vehicle?
No. Right now, there's no such thing as a fully autonomous combat vehicle. They're being developed. Drones are considered to be semi-autonomous. Okay, now solvency. What's going on right now? Solvency, what happens when our plan passes? Floyd Despens specifically writes, he works in the military, and he says that the human decision-making will be much more safer than any other type of decision-making. Pretty much what I'm saying is that any decision that a computer can make, specifically about lives, will be much more better than any decision that an unmanned drone can make. There's multiple reasons for this. One, humans feel emotion. Drones don't. Humans know what a civilian is. Drones don't. And that's never going to change. The stat to prove that to you is that 192 drone strikes, which are already semi-autonomous, have killed 192 civilians have died because of drone strikes, but only less than 50 civilian casualties have happened with manned vehicles. And guess what? There have been more manned strikes than there have been drone strikes. Yet there are more civilian casualties caused by these drone strikes. Thus the plan. Just the advantages. Sorry, I won't take any questions. Okay. The first advantage is the military-industrial complex. Right now, we see that the Navy has planned to start using fully autonomous drones. That's according to CNN in February 2016. The second point is that the U.S. is starting to use more drones in the Middle East. Over 9,000 airstrikes in Iraq have occurred since 2014, and 9,500 in Syria. Furthermore, we see, according to Daily Mail, autonomous machines can easily be hacked. That is really scary. At the point where we're going to be sending these drones to the Middle East, at the point where we're going to be sending these drones into combat, we're going to be seeing huge detriments if terrorist organizations were able to get their hands on these drones and just convert them to their side. 4, Dr. Sarah Krebs of the Cornell University says that autonomous drones lead to lack of subjective decision-making. Robots have no accountability and have no sense of morals right now, and they're never going to be able to have that. Thus, what happens when our plan passes? 1, we see that the Navy won't be able to use these fully autonomous drones, which means that they're not going to be getting into many conflicts, many wars. Second thing which happens is that we prevent the loss of civilian casualties because of the bad decision making. Pretty much, we're going to be seeing more and more push towards manned vehicles, manned drones, which are inherently much better than any semi-autonomous or autonomous drone. 3, we also prevent the hacking of these autonomous drones, which means that we stop further lives from being lost. Impacts: 1, we're going to be seeing the quality of life for people not only in the Middle East are going to increase because the perception of drones are going to go away because if there's no more drones or no more autonomous drones, then they won't be scared anymore. The second thing is that lives are simply going to be saved because these terrorist organizations aren't going to be able to convert these drones. The second advantage is that of hegemony. So right now, the world wants the U.S. to ban. For example, in Russia, Stefan Cohen, who's a government official, specifically asked the U.S. to put a harsh regulation on the drones, on the creation of autonomous drones. Right now, Russia knows that the Pentagon is trying to make this black tank, and what they're doing is that they're specifically pushing the U.S. to stop doing that. Furthermore, they weren't happy with the semi-autonomous drones that we use in Syria right now. How are they going to react when we start using autonomous drones? So the key aspect here is to decrease the escalation of the Syria conflict. We need to use soft power, and the only way to use soft power is to appease Russia so we can start negotiations. The B subpoint is that the UN has specifically called for a ban in autonomous drones, and the C subpoint is that the Chinese officials have also stated that the U.S. to stop putting so much money into the creation of these autonomous drones. The second thing which is happening in the status quo is that the UN has soft power as an all-time low. The A subpoint is that China and U.S. relations are at all-time low because of the South China Sea conflict. Furthermore, you can cross-apply my articulation, which I give about Russia, specifically being pissed because of because of the crisis which is happening in Syria right now. So what happens when our plan passes? Multiple things. We increase the soft power, we increase the negotiations that these countries can have, because right now, these negotiations aren't happening. If we're effectively able to appease the UN, China, and Russia, we're going to be seeing a lot of impacts. One, the Paris Summit will be signed because environmental things have to happen when countries work together. Two, we're going to be seeing conflicts are going to decrease in South China Sea and with Russia in the Middle East, because now we're effectively going to be able to start these negotiations. Also, it's perception. If other countries see that the U.S. is doing it, then other countries will also follow. Impacts: one, lives are going to be saved, and the economy is going to be improved. Soft power is key to all of that. For all these reasons, I urge a strong opinion.
Can you tagline each of your contentions for me real quick?
Military, industrial complex, and hegemony.
What about human decision? Is that a contention or just
that's a solvency point.
Okay. All right. Does anybody need a second?
Are you going to give us the roll now?
Yeah. So essentially, I'm going to go my case, their case. We have 4 contentions and a counterplan, and then I'm going to go into their case. Before I begin, I'd like to extend a brief thanks to everybody in this room. First of all, judges, probably something better to be doing on Sunday. We're glad you're here. Second of all, opponents, hey, congratulations on making it this far, guys. We're glad you're here to make this debate possible. And third of all, my partner for being a great friend and a great partner. Thanks, buddy. All right, cool. And off-time roadmap again, just to reiterate, 4 contentions, counterplan 4 contentions. Okay. And with that, I will start time right now. My partner and I proudly negate the resolve. The United States federal government should ban fully autonomous combat vehicles. Now, we agree with the definitions and the work criteria. That's not going to be an issue in this debate. So the negation essentially has 2 options in parliamentary debate. The first one is to straight negate the opponent's case, and the second one is to propose a counterplan, or a plan that's mutually exclusive from our opponents that we think will perform better and cause more net benefits, and that's exactly what we're doing today. So our counterplan is pretty simple. Essentially, the United States federal government is going to ban every autonomous combat vehicle except the Raven drone, which it will continue R&D on and will eventually put into use. So essentially, I'm going to read, the Raven drone is a drone currently being developed by a private company called AeroVironment. To reiterate, our counterplan is the United States federal government is going to ban every autonomous vehicle except this, the Raven drone. And our first contention is simple. It's the safety of the United States. Because we can't, so essentially what I'm going to do in my next 2 contentions is I'm going to analyze how drone strikes currently have helped the United States. I'll take your questions in a little bit, I'm sorry. Drone strikes, also in protected time. Drone strikes essentially make the United States safer by decimating terrorist networks across the world. Some point one, according to New York Times analysis, drone strikes have killed upwards of 3,500 militants, including dozens of high-level commanders implicated in organizing a plot against the United States. In addition to this, Obama says, according to President Obama, dozens of highly skilled al-Qaeda commanders, trainers, bomb makers, and operatives have been taken off the battlefield. Plots have been disrupted that would have targeted international aviation, United States transit, and our troops in Afghanistan. In addition to this, on November 1st, 2013, drone strikes killed Pakistani Taliban leader Hakimullah Masood. Links under our plan, drone strikes are simply going to continue and be carried out by this Raven drone. And because of that, the United States is going to continue seeing these benefits. The second subpoint I want to mention is that of civilians. Essentially, drone strikes kill fewer civilians as a percentage of fatalities per major strike than any other military weapon. Traditional weapons of war, bombs, shells, mines, and mortars cause way more unintended collateral damage to people and property than drones, whose accuracy and technical precision mostly limit casualties to combatants' unintended arguments. So essentially the impacts of this argument is by continuing drone strikes with this Raven drone, we're going to save more human lives, and we're going to kill less civilians than traditional warfare, and that's good all across the board for the United States and for the world. And now I'm going to move on to my third contention, which is that of the Raven drone and why the Raven drone is good. Essentially, we need to understand what this Raven drone really is. A third-party company called AeroVironment has made a new drone called the Raven drone and recently tested it in Syria. An analysis done by The Atlantic of this drone found that it had a 99% accuracy rate. That's essentially the highest you can get because there's always a possibility that something's going to go wrong. The drone was manufactured after a lot of careful research and time, and essentially is the potential to revolutionize how we fight in the military. Links of this are simple. By banning all autonomous combat vehicles, it makes it possible to still use this drone, and the impacts of this is a drone's potential to save lives and eradicate enemies which the app is hindering. Now, just to clarify something else about the Raven drone that's going to come up in this round, the Raven drone is a fully autonomous vehicle. It's not controlled by humans at all. It carries out drone strikes by itself, and that's very important to keep in mind as we go throughout this round. Now I'm going to go right on to my fourth contention, which is that the Raven drone will save military lives and save military lives. As of October 1st, 2015, there have been 2,325 United States military deaths in the war in Afghanistan. 1,856 of these deaths have been the result of hostile action, and 2,083 of these deaths have and 20,083 American service members have been wounded in action during the war. Essentially, this drone is going to stop terrorism, help us decimate these terrorist networks, and save American lives. And with that, I'm going to move on to their case. So essentially, before they kind of went into their case, they talked a lot about human decision. And they said that autonomous vehicles, since they don't have emotion and since they don't have morals, won't be able to make the same kind of decisions humans do. However, to back this up, they brought up stats from drone strikes, which are currently carried out by people. So they're bringing up stats to say that drone strikes autonomous vehicles can't make the same decisions as humans. And then they're backing up those stats with vehicles controlled by humans. So essentially we see their argument doesn't make any sense. In addition to this is refuted by the fact that drones have actually killed less civilians than humans on the ground throughout history. Their next argument was about the military-industrial complex, and essentially we see that our counterplan essentially solved for this. We see that they say that we essentially see their counterplan solves for this. We essentially see that we can continue developing the Raven drone with our counterplan, and we'll still be banning other autonomous vehicles like the black tank they talk about. Their second contention was about hegemony and soft power, and we see that first of all their argument doesn't make any sense, and second of all our counterplan solves. So let's talk about why their argument intrinsically doesn't make any sense. They bring up these conflicts with Russia, and they bring up this conflict with China in the South China Sea, but these conflicts aren't about drones. How exactly will getting rid of autonomous vehicles and drones completely solve this conflict? They're essentially coming up here and telling you that, the United States and China are going to have a great relationship if we ban autonomous vehicles, if we ban autonomous combat vehicles. Judges, if you think about that logically, it doesn't make any sense because the conflict in the South China Sea is about the South China Sea, not autonomous combat vehicles. That's simple logic, and if you look at their argument with a little bit more detail, it simply falls apart. Now, Judge, just to reiterate everything I've said this round, I know I talked quite fast and wasn't able to get through a lot of, and you guys might have missed some things, I'm just going to go through with it. We've seen that the Raven drone will increase the safety of the United States. We've seen that drone strikes, semi-autonomous drone strikes have killed less civilians, and the Raven drone with this 99% accuracy rate will continue to kill less civilians. We've seen that the Raven drone has a 99% accuracy rate. We've seen that it saves civilian lives and military lives. We've seen that their case falls apart because their whole contention of human decision is backed up by faulty evidence, and their hegemony argument doesn't make sense. In addition to this, Russia is also developing autonomous combat vehicles. I'd like to point that out. That's just another reason why their argument about hegemony doesn't make sense. And because our case is strong, and if we look deeply into their case and we logically critique their case, it falls apart. I strongly urge a negation vote in today's debate round.
What's your order?
So I'll go over the affirmative case and then the negative case. And it's going to be in the same order as presented. But there's going to be a little bit of an overview on top. Everyone ready?
Yep.
So our entire case is telling you why the move towards autonomous drones in different areas is bad and why countries don't like this move. And their counterplan is then to allow a type of autonomous drone to be sent into these areas and to continue development. This basically means that not only do they not solve our entire case, but this is a terrible idea, not only for our first contention, but also specifically for our relations advantage. But first, to go over our case. There is one response that they have on our inherency, which is that, essentially, because we use evidence from the semi-autonomous drones, that proves that the drones right now are even worse. That's not true. The way semi-autonomous drones work are they're manned by, they're driven around by a person in the sky or like a person far away, but the actual killing is done by the drone itself. So that means that the statistics that we prove show you that not only in the status quo are semi-autonomous worse than manned, but they're going to get worse with fully autonomous. I'll take any questions at the end if I have time.
Sure.
But the biggest problem that my opponents have conceded is that they're used as propaganda. In the Middle East, these drones are used as propaganda. They've conceded that one civilian casualty leads to 7 terrorist attacks. And at the point where my opponents do not address the fact that not only do drones not have morals, but they can't really stop shooting, right? They don't know the difference between a civilian and a terrorist. That basically means that this propaganda is going to go up, and that's going to lead to all the negative impacts that we're talking about. So now essentially on our solvency, my opponents have conceded the entirety of our solvency arguments. They've conceded that human decision is better, and they've also conceded the specific problems with drones, with the fully autonomous drones. So now on our first contention, they've conceded that the problem with the fully autonomous drones is that they can be hacked. That means that if they can be hacked, then all of these problems, that all of the civilian casualty problems that that they're talking about, that we talk about, are still going to be there because of the fact that terrorists can simply hack the drones and then be using it for their side. But also, we can pretty much point out how they've conceded that the drones in the Middle East are increasing tensions, and that the Cornell University study finds that these drones, that autonomous drones, are specifically bad for these things. Also, you can extend the fact that the Navy is planning to use these drones right now, which means that all of the impacts that we're talking about are going to occur soon. Which means if we don't stop it now, then all of the negative impacts that we talk about are going to occur. Once again, any questions at the end if I have time. So essentially, you can extend the point, basically the biggest point on hacking. Even if they say that all these other drones are bad and the Raven drone is great, the Raven drone, they have not provided any solvency as to why it can't be hacked. Which means that this is specific to the affirmative. The affirmative is the only term that's banning all types of drones, which means we prevent the 100% risk that they're going to be hacked. On the second contention, this is basically where they lose the debate, because they are completely glossing over our uniqueness evidence, which says that all of these other countries are specifically calling for the United States to ban fully autonomous drones. They've conceded that China wants us to do this. They've conceded that Russia wants us to do this. They've conceded that the United Nations wants us to do this, which means that Their counterplan does not solve for this. All the counterplan does is prove that the United States won't listen to these other nations, that they'll just keep doing all these things for their own hegemony loss, and that's going to increase tensions. Also, they're saying that, the South China Sea and the Middle East are not directly due to the drones. That's not our argument. Our argument is that banning these drones is going to cause an increase in soft power. This soft power is going to be able to be used to solve these conflicts. That's how soft power works. If countries like us, they'll want to negotiate with us, which means right now the peace talks that are occurring in Syria, right now the peace talks that are going to start between Vietnam and China and the South China Sea are going to be disrupted by their counterplan and can only be solved by our plan. Also, I'd like to specifically point out how we tell you that the reason why Russia is so mad and not willing to negotiate with us in Syria is due to the fact of the drone strikes. Just 2 days ago, the United States bombed because of the drone strikes, because they bombed 80 civilians, which means that this move to drones and move to autonomous drones is the reason why Russia is mad. If we're taking proactive moves to reduce the amount of drones that are in the Middle East, we win today's debate, which we do. So now on the counterplan, essentially they're basically like stealing our entire case. Like, did you hear any real responses to our case? They basically just said that the counterplan will solve back, the counterplan will solve back, the counterplan will solve back. This essentially takes away our ground. This is specific to the fact that we have to defend the entire resolution. The resolution forces us to ban all fully autonomous vehicles, which means that they can pick any different type of vehicle and simply ban it, which means that you have to vote against them, not only because they're taking away our fairness, because of the fact we have to defend one action, and they can defend a ban on the lifting of the allowance for any single type of drone. Well, we have to defend the entirety of the plan, which means that for ground and for fairness, you should be voting against them. Also takes away education. Did you hear any? There's no way to predict what type of drone they're going to use. Like, in prep time, we didn't read anything about the Raven drone, which means that this proves that we're not really able to predict as to what type they're going to ban, what type they're not going to ban, which means that overall there is no clash. But getting on to the first contention on drone strikes, we say that because autonomous drones don't have feelings, and we prove that that even the Raven drone, they say it doesn't have feelings, doesn't have all of these problems, which means that the fully autonomous drones will not be able to solve back. But even on this first contention, it doesn't really matter because we're only banning fully autonomous. We both sides agree that manned drones are okay. So as long as we prove their second contention about the Raven drone being false, then we win today's debate. Because if we prove that the Raven drone is a bad idea, or the idea of the Raven drone is a bad idea, we win today. This is specific because their evidence, it doesn't even make sense. How can private companies use vehicles in Syria? All of these things have to be done through the United States, which means that there's no way that this private company could have actually done this action in Syria. But the biggest point is that this 99% statistic doesn't really make any sense, right? So if that statistic doesn't make sense, you have to disregard their entire case. But the biggest point is that they don't stop hacking. If they don't stop hacking, then they don't stop any of the ability for... So even if this 99% statistic is true, that doesn't preclude the fact that these can be used against the United States. Finally, on their fourth contention about the Raven drone saving military lives, Putin, because of the fact that the Raven drone would increase conflict in all these areas, that would mean the United States would have to go more into these areas. That means more ground troops, more of all of these things, which means that their case is fundamentally, hey, let's go do more conflict. That's bad. That leads to less soft power. You vote affirmative.
Yeah. All right, I'll go their case, my case.
Same order?
Yeah. Your case, my case.
In the way that was presented, like down the floor?
Yeah. Alright, is everyone ready? Alright, essentially I think thank yous are taken care of, but I'd again like to congratulate the other side for making it this far. And so without any further ado, let's just start time now. The first argument they make against our case is that we don't solve their entire case. However, yes, we do, because we're still banning all fully autonomous vehicles except for the Raven drone. That means we still gain most of their advantages because of the fact that we're still doing most of their plan. The second thing that they talked about was that the drones are the ones doing the killing. However, the humans are still doing the maneuvering, which is why they're going to lose the debate. If you do agree that human decision making is better, humans are still the ones maneuvering the drones that they're talking about, and that's why we're winning. That's why we're winning on that point. It's literally being carried out by people right now. The semi-autonomous drones that they're talking about, the humans are the ones doing the maneuvering. Yes.
If you're doing most of our plan, doesn't that make your pick completely unfair?
I'll go into that after on my case. All right, cool. So essentially, the humans are still doing the humans are still maneuvering it. Meaning, even if you buy that human decision making is better, humans are still doing the maneuvering of the drones. That means that's not going to be a reason to vote for them. The second thing that they talked about was that drones create terrorism, but except that won't matter because of the fact that we have a high accuracy. We talked about how there's a 99% accuracy with this drone. The only reason drones create terrorism is the fact that they kill so many civilians. Now that we're taking that out of the equation, terrorism won't be created by these drones. Their second contention talks about a military-industrial complex. They say that it can be hacked, but it can't because the drone that's completely autonomous has artificial intelligence and runs on networks that can't be hacked. I already took a question. I'll take it at the end if I have time. So yeah, it can't because the drone already has artificial intelligence and runs on networks that can't be hacked. That won't be a reason you're voting against this. Now, their third contention talks about hegemony, and they make this a huge point, and they say that they're calling for the ban, that Russia's calling for the ban. However, they fail to realize that the countries that they're talking about are developing these autonomous drones themselves. In fact, you can search this up. Russia has the biggest autonomous vehicle drone program because they're the ones who are actually doing it. If we all of a sudden take that down, doesn't mean Russia is all of a sudden want to negotiate with us. That's completely false because the fact that Russia is also making these programs themselves. So basically, you're not going to be buying this entire hegemony argument because they're using a weak link. They're saying that all of a sudden because we ban fully autonomous drones, that all of this good things will happen, that South China Sea conflict will be solved, that everything will be solved. That's a completely weak link. They don't show you exactly how that would happen. Furthermore, we show you that Russia is also using these fully autonomous drones, which means that they don't actually gain any solvency on that. Cool. Go to our case. The first thing that they talk about is that how we have no real responses, that we take away their ground, except we have a couple key responses to this. First of all, you should have done the research on this. It's not my problem that you didn't know what the Raven drone was. The fact that we did the research doesn't mean that we should be voted down for this argument. Second of all, it's effective policy analysis. The fact that we're talking about this Raven drone, the fact that we're even bringing it up shows how we actually did the we're making the debate more educational because we're bringing up the things that are actually going on in the world. You also talk about how there's no clash. However, you even refuted everything. There's clear clash in the debate. You had refutations for literally everything. That doesn't mean that there's no clash all of a sudden. We didn't take away anything. You still ran everything that you ran. All right, cool. So that's essentially on the kind of theory shell that they ran. So essentially, there's a couple of key responses. So first of all is because you didn't do the research doesn't mean we should be taken down for that. Furthermore, we're having effective policy analysis. You clearly refuted everything. You have clear clash in the debate. You can't bring that up. So that's why you're not going to be voting for that. They also talk about how can a private company do the actual thing in Syria. However, it was licensed to the actual military. That's how they were able to do that. That's how they were able to actually carry out that mission. We didn't say that the private company was the one doing it. It was obviously licensed to the military who then did it. Alright, cool. They also talk about how we increased conflict, but again, this is already refuted. The only reason they're saying this is because of their hegemony argument. That was most of their refutations for the entire case. However, I have already showed you how hegemony simply doesn't have any stock in today's debate, and that's why you're automatically voting neg right here, right now. Alright, cool. There's going to be a couple of key reasons why you're voting neg. The first is because of the fact that we're doing the actual research, that we have the actual effective policy that will actually work in today's round. The fact of the matter is that we're also banning all fully autonomous combat vehicles, but we're making sure we have some sort of leeway in the form of this Raven drone, which will ensure that we not only save that we have better safety for the United States, but we also save more civilian lives and more human lives. In fact, they also concede when my partner talks about how drones kill less civilians, meaning that because of the fact that we're using this Raven drone, that means that we're killing less civilians. They've already conceded to that fact that you can't refute that now, and that's why you're going to be voting for us right off the bat, because the fact that they've conceded this shows how we're doing the proper policy, because we're ensuring that less civilians and less human lives are lost due to this Raven drone. The second reason you're going to be voting for us is the fact that their hegemony argument simply has zero link. Yeah, you're talking about increasing soft power and all these things, but the fact of the matter is that the countries you're talking about are developing these autonomous vehicles themselves. Just because we take out these autonomous vehicles and Russia's doing the same thing doesn't mean we're all of a sudden going to increase soft power with them. This is completely illogical, and that's why you're not going to be voting for hegemony. Literally every single refutation that they made today was about hegemony, and because of the fact that we've showed you that hegemony is simply not true in this case, you're going to be voting neg right here, right now. The third reason you're voting for us is because the CP solves for literally everything that they talk about, and it ensures that we have safety for the U.S. and less civilians are lost. The fact is that it has a 99% accuracy rate according to The Atlantic, which is a credible news source, and we've shown you how it's going to save civilian lives. It's going to ensure that that terrorism won't be too big of an issue, because we're going to completely decimate these terrorist networks, and we're also saving military lives. That's going to be 3 reasons you're voting neg right off the bat. So essentially, yeah, you're not going to put any stock into their claims about how we're taking away their ground, because they still made every single refutation that they could have possibly made. The fact of the matter is that we're doing the actual education in this round by bringing up this Raven drone. We have the effective policy analysis, which they don't, and that's why you're going to be voting for us right off the bat. Thank you.
Right. Cool. Roadmap of what I'm going to do, I'm going to kind of get like 1, 2, 4 issues that I think have come up during this round. I'm going to kind of riff on each one, talk about each one a little bit, and then try to bring it all back together in the end and tell you why you're voting neg today. With that, I'm going to start time right now. Alright, judges, so the first issue that I'm going to talk about, and the one that they seemed to make a huge deal of, was hacking. They came up here and they told us that, oh, the Raven drone can be hacked, and that's why we're winning this round. That's the biggest reason why we're winning this round. They said that themselves. However, they failed to understand what kind of fully autonomous vehicle the Raven drone is. As my partner brought up, the Raven drone is run on its own network, its own local network, does not have any access with outside, nobody's controlling it, it's being run autonomously with artificial intelligence. It has no contact with the outside, and therefore it cannot be hacked. Don't let them come up and tell you it can be hacked, because they conceded themselves that they did no research on the Raven drone. They said that, so they can't come up and tell you something about the Raven drone if they themselves conceded that they did no research on it. And that's why we researched the Raven drone, we know how it works, and we know that it can't be hacked. That's why we are winning this round, and that's very, very important. Now I'm going to move on to the second main issue that I think I should talk about a little bit, which is their only essentially valid argument, this whole idea of hegemony. And they say that, oh, if we use the Raven drone, if we don't use any drones and we ban all autonomous vehicles, that'll give us the soft power to negotiate treaties with Russia and China. However, this just isn't true for 2 key reasons. First of all, Russia is the largest developer of autonomous vehicles in the world right now. Russia themselves are developing autonomous drones, and that in itself shows that their argument holds no value. Second of all, they failed to refute our refutation, or maybe they failed to understand it. Sorry, I might have been speaking too fast. But my refutation essentially was that they're not attacking the underlying issue. You're essentially trying to solve a problem about the South China Sea with drones. They never responded to the refutation, my refutation, that without attacking the underlying issue, you can't actually solve it. So the conflict will continue to happen. And that's very important. Don't come up here, don't let them come up here and tell you that, oh, by banning autonomous vehicles, that's going to solve the South China Sea conflict, judges. That simply does not make any sense. Now, the third issue I'm going to talk about is our counterplan and why they disagree with our counterplan. They say that our counterplan is abusive and they weren't able to run arguments, and that isn't right for a few key reasons. First of all, it's not our problem that you didn't do the research on the Raven drone. The Raven drone is an up-and-coming thing, especially in the field of fully autonomous vehicles. We did the research on it, you didn't. That we shouldn't be penalized for you not doing the research. In addition to this, parliamentary debate is supposed to be educational. It's our job to propose the best and most effective policy possible, and that's exactly what we're doing. You can't criticize our counterplan for being too good. Our job is to make the best counterplan possible. It's that simple. And they say that there's no clash in this debate, but they're still arguing with us. You can't come up here and say, you're not letting us refute you, there's no clash in this debate, and then come up here and refute us and create clash. That doesn't make any sense, Judge. There is a strong amount of clash in this debate. This is a good debate, and don't let them come up here and tell you that our counterplan is taking away from this debate. And thirdly and finally, they didn't respond to the thing which I said at the beginning of my first speech, which is that a counterplan is a perfectly legal way to parliamentary debate. I came up here and explained to you guys what a counterplan was, and that it's a viable route for the negation, and the truth is that a counterplan is legal, and we're not stepping out of any bounds by running a counterplan. Fourthly and finally, I want to talk about drones, specifically our Raven drone. We've shown you throughout our debate with empirical evidence that drone strikes save civilians, save military lives, and kill less civilians than other drones do. The Raven drone, they dropped our whole statistics about how drone strikes kill less civilians, and the fact is that the Raven drone, with its 99% accuracy rate, is more accurate than semi-autonomous drones that are out there, and therefore will kill less civilians, Judge. Net benefits. We're benefiting. And that's going to bring me into my last and my final reason why you should vote for us today, judges. You're voting this round on net benefits. Which side can provide the most which side creates the most net benefits in the world? Essentially, you're comparing the Raven drone to nothing. Their only argument is about hegemony, and we say that this argument is soft, has no strong link, and in fact, if you look at it logically, it doesn't make sense. On the other hand, we have the Raven drone on our side, who we've proved to you can kill less civilians and decimate terrorist networks that are a threat to United States. We see that we obviously win under this criteria of net benefits, because even if you buy their criteria about hegemony, we're talking about saving human lives. They're talking about resolving a conflict that's political. And that's why, judges, you're voting negative in today's round. Thank you so much.
Before I start, as the last from the speaker, I'd like to thank everyone. This has tremendously been a great round where we've learned a lot about the military. Starting time now. There's too many conceited arguments by the negation for them to win this round. Our entire case shows you why moving towards autonomous drones is bad, and their solution is to somehow allow for autonomous drones to exist. That is their counterplan. To allow for the Raven drone, which they claim is autonomous, to continue to exist. And their proposition is to use that Raven drone to somehow solve for the conflicts that exist in the status quo. At the point where they concede that Russia has specifically stated, U.S., please stop developing these autonomous drones, they've also conceded that the UN wants the U.S. to stop, and they've also conceded that China wants the U.S. to stop. When we look at our second advantage, that of hegemony, they completely concede the UN and China. Their only analysis is about Russia. They completely concede what the analysis that we're giving is. Our argument isn't that soft power will somehow lead to, banning drones will somehow lead to solving these problems. Our argument is that right now China and Russia aren't open to negotiations with the U.S. because the U.S. isn't listening to them. They're continuously using these drones. That's the problem in the status quo. And the only way to solve and create these negotiations with these other countries is to appease these countries. And what do these countries want? They want the US to specifically stop using these autonomous drones. And their proposition is to continuously allow the use of these autonomous drones. Soft power comes first. It frames out all other impacts in this round for a multitude of reasons. One, soft power controls the economy. If you're not going to have proper relations with China, Russia, or other countries, you're not going to be having an effective global market.
Point of order, stop time. So this argumentation about how soft power solves for the economy is completely new. That was never brought up in their first speech. So completely take that off the flow.
Okay. This is what we call impact calculus. In debate, the last two speeches are supposed to weigh impacts between both speeches. Soft power is an impact which we have on our second advantage. What we're doing is we're saying soft power comes before all other contentions. All right, under consideration. Continuing time now. You cannot solve conflict if you don't have soft power. Pretty much. They aren't able to solve for soft power. If countries don't listen to each other, if countries don't do anything that other countries want them to do, the conflict is only going to rise. They concede the fact that Russia really hated when the US used semi-autonomous drones to kill 80 civilians in Syria. 100% conceded. In their world, what we're going to be seeing is a push for these drones to continuously bomb Syrian people. And that's inherently going to hurt relations with Russia, and that's inherently going to hurt relations with China as well. Soft power will be able to solve for these because now we're going to be able to have effective open negotiations with these countries. But even if you don't buy that, let's look at the counterplan, and specifically the line-by-line analysis. The first disadvantage they give you is that about safety. We're not stopping all drones, we're just stopping the use of autonomous drones. Our plan will not link into the first disadvantage about safety. That inherently makes no sense. Semi-autonomous drones exist in both worlds. Do not buy that argument. The only disadvantage that you can probably buy is that of Raven drones, but that inherently also makes no sense. They say that the first argument that they say is that the Raven drone is 99% accurate. Blah 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 blah. Only use it once. There's no way to tell how effective the Raven drone is it actually is. Because they've only had to study. Yeah.
So this argument about how it's only been used once is completely new. If they wanted to bring that up, they could have brought that in their second speech so that I would have a proper chance to refute that. And so don't actually flow that because that's completely new and we have no chance to respond to it.
Response?
My response is that a lot of articulation on the Raven drone was made in the negative block. You talk a lot about the Raven drone. I have a right to respond to it now because the first speech was really blippy about what the Raven drone actually is.
Take it into consideration.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of problems with the Raven drone. The first argument that they concede is that the perception of terrorism. Pretty much our argument isn't that drones are inherently going to be killing people, which is going to cause propaganda. Our argument is that in the Middle East, people fear drones. Just the very idea of semi-autonomous drones are already scaring people. At the point where you're pushing for autonomous drones, that's going to scare a lot more people because there's one, autonomous drones have no emotions, 100% conceded. Autonomous drones have no morals, 100% conceded. They know that. There's no way for these autonomous drones to be able to effectively ease this perception of fear in the Middle East, which links into all of our impacts. If people are scared in the Middle East, if there's this perception of fear in the Middle East, you're still going to trigger more terrorists, more people joining terrorist organizations. That's another independent reason to not look at the counterplan. The second argument is that they completely don't understand how drones are hacked. They say that there's no contact. That's also the MO. They brought that out in the second speech. No contact means it's easier to be hacked. That inherently makes no sense. If they have no contact with the USFG, if they have no contact with military bases, it's easily going to be hacked by terrorist organizations. The second argument is that they don't explain how this functions. They don't explain how drones can't be hacked. They have a separate network. Yeah, a lot of companies have a separate network. Amazon has a separate network. It still gets hacked. That argument makes no sense. For all of these reasons, I urge you to look at the plan over the counterplan.
Alright, good debate, guys.
Good debate.
It's fun. Good
Good
debate.
debate.
Alright, thank you, Judge.
Thank you for judging.
Thank you for judging.
Thank you for judging.
Thanks for judging.
Good job, you guys.
Thank you for judging. Do you guys have any like feedback?
I think the hearing's
We'll
going to a little bit.
deliberate and then we'll give oral RFPs.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Cool.